Hi everyone, my name's Jen, I'm an author and a book reviewer, and welcome to this different angle, this different filming, well, not location because this is still my house, but I have now moved my office into this room, so I've been reunited with my books, so we have a bookish backdrop. I'm still trying to figure out angles and all of that, but this is where we're filming for now. Welcome. I've been asked quite a lot recently if I can recommend some short books. So this video is going to be 20 books that you could read in a day. And by that, I don't mean you could read all 20 of these in one day, though maybe somebody could. I just mean each one is one that you could potentially read in a day. They're all under 200 pages. I've got 5 that are under 100, 11 that are under, well, between 100 and 150, and then 4 that are between 150 and 200. This is going to coincide with a reading vlog that I'm going to be doing in the next few weeks, where I read some of the shortest books on my TBR, obviously not the ones that I'm going to be talking about today, because these I have already read and would recommend. But I think that we're on a similar wavelength in that lots of you, as I said, have been asking me for short book recommendations, and I'm in the mood to read some short books. I think because it's the beginning of the year and it feels like a good way to kickstart your reading. Not because the aim is to read as many books as possible, but I'm excited to sample lots of different things. That's just how I'm feeling at the moment. I was listening to the Books Unbound podcast, which I would heartily recommend. I will link it down below, run by Ariel and Raylene. And Ariel was talking recently about how she approaches reading like a charcuterie board, and Raylene prefers to think of it as digesting a whole meal. They were talking about not long and short books, actually they were talking about going between different books, but I think you can apply it to long and short books too. So if you are looking to read some shorter books for whatever reason, here are some recommendations for you. I will list all of the books in the description box down below. Let's dive in. So on this list I have got novels, I've got a few non-fiction, and I've even got one play. I didn't pick any of my short story collections because most of them are under 200 pages, and I recently did a video where I talked about my favourite ever short story collections, so I'll link that in the description. And likewise, I didn't highlight any poetry books either, because pretty much all of those, bar a few anthologies, are also under 200 pages, so I'll link poetry playlists in the description box down below if you're looking for poetry book recommendations. In the 0 to 100 pages category, we have got 2 non-fictions, 2 novels and 1 play. So the first one I will mention is Weasels in the Attic by Hiroko Oyamada, which is the only book of hers that I've read and loved. I've had a bit of a hit and miss relationship with her in the past. This is translated from the Japanese by David Boyd, I think. Yes, by David Boyd. And this I read in a themed reading vlog where I was reading books set around dinner parties, because it's one of my favourite things to read about. But that vlog in general ended up being an utter failure, because I think I hated everything I read in that apart from this, unless there's another one that I'm forgetting. But again, I will link that reading vlog in the description box down below, because there will be more in-depth thoughts on this text if you would like to go hear me chat about it, basically as soon as I'd finished reading it, because it's been a few months since I finished it. I love this cover, which is by Luke Bird and Danielle Cole. There's so much tension in this book. It's only 70 pages, split into 3 different sections. It's about things that friends aren't really saying to each other. In fact, more and more is left unsaid the older that they get, and they're finding that quite difficult territory to traverse. So in one instance, a friend has a baby and invites the other friends around to meet the infant, but neglects to say that he's had a baby. So they come round thinking he's probably just got a new fancy fish because he collects fish. But no, he has a child and they are perplexed as to why he'd never mentioned that before. Then in another section, a huge storm means that one of their houses becomes a bit of a sanctuary. And then also in another section, there is an infestation of weasels in an attic, feeling like a home is being invaded. And then also there's the want for a home to be invaded, because one of the couples is going through IVF and it's not working out for them. So there's a lot of subtext in this book, and it was that I adored, really. There's lots to dissect. So if that's your cup of tea, I would recommend it. I'd also very much recommend Cold Enough for Snow by Jessica Au. It was one of my favourite books a couple of years ago. It's a novel about a daughter and a mother who decide to go on holiday together to Tokyo. It's neutral ground for both of them. It's set during the autumn, so there's lots of beautiful description of Japanese gardens. It will also make you very hungry, and it's about how their relationship roles have been reversed a little bit. The daughter wants to care for the mother. The mother feels as though she's relying on the daughter more and more. They're both quite frustrated with each other, but obviously love each other too. And like with Weasels in the Attic, it's about a lot of things that remain unsaid and are kind of bubbling below the surface. Another book that will make you super hungry is this non-fiction book here called Tiny Moons, A Year of Eating in Shanghai by Nina Mingya Powles. This one is 85 pages, and as the title would suggest, this is about Nina spending a year in Shanghai. She's studying there, and it's about all the food that she fell in love with while she was staying there. The food that she eats there is a source of comfort and makes her think of a family in New Zealand. She is of Chinese Malaysian heritage but was born in New Zealand, and she's drawing all of these lines between memories of her childhood and the things that she's eating now. It is a beautiful, beautiful book. Another non-fiction title is On Trampolining by Rebecca Perry, and this one is 96 pages. This is about sport and discipline and body. This is an extract. She says, "The brain is like a horse. You love the horse. The horse's nose is so soft, but it will throw you off into a shallow stream and make you eat mud. A gifted athlete is able to tame their brain in such a way that their thoughts become like water, by which I mean blood, running into every corner but still under command." She is fusing muscle memory to do with trampolining and being a competitive trampolinist when she was much younger, and also memories and how we recollect them, how accurate or not accurate they are, especially when they're linked with somewhat traumatic experiences. She looks at the body as text as well, looking at fairy tales and how those have been adapted over time, and how she's misremembered a particular fairy tale, and how she really can't reconcile the fairy tale when she finds it as an adult and the version of it that she has stored in her body and has had stored in her body for most of her life, because they don't match up, and she's sure that that must be wrong, even though the evidence points to the contrary. So it's all about the stories that we tell ourselves, the stories that we literally embody in one way or another. It's brilliant. It's very poetic. She is a poet, and I've enjoyed her poetry before. Then A Blast from the Past, for the final book under 100 pages before we get into the longer ones, is a play. This is Peter and Alice by John Logan. Hands up if you remember me talking about this on the channel about 10 years ago. This is a play that I don't think has been put on since this version here with Judi Dench and Ben Whishaw, which I never got to see. I really wish I had done. I would love it to be on in the future again with these two, or maybe adapted into a film or something. I don't know. I would love to see it adapted. But regardless, it's a wonderful play to read. This is about Alice Liddell, who was the real life Alice in Wonderland, and Peter Llewellyn Davies, who was the real life Peter Pan. And when he was quite young and she was much older, they actually met once in real life, and it's about their imagined conversation during this real life meeting, talking about what it's like for the world to know about you but not know about you at all, how you've been fictionalized by a now very famous person, J.M. Barrie and Lewis Carroll, and how bizarre that is, and how you feel like your life is not your own. You will know, if you've been around here a long time, that I absolutely adore Peter Pan and Alice in Wonderland and all of the imagery in both of those things, and was quite obsessed is maybe a stretch, very interested in the relationship between those stories and the life outside of those stories, and this gives context to that. Fair warning, this book will absolutely destroy you. I know many of you messaged me after you read it once I had recommended it, saying that you were in pieces, so please bear that in mind if you would like to pick it up. But it remains one of my favourite books, and more on that in a video in the next few weeks as well. All right, now we're moving into the books that are between 100 and 150 pages. We have Passing by Nella Larsen, one of my favourite classics ever. This was written in the 1920s and it's set in Harlem. It's about racism and colorism and is the book that The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett is based on. This is about two lighter-skinned black women. So we've got Irene and Claire. They knew each other as kids. They haven't seen each other for a long time. And then in their young adulthood, they come across each other again. Irene is still living in Harlem. She is married to a black man. She lives in a black community. Claire has decided to try and pass as white, and she has married a very racist white man. And when their lives collide again, Claire wants to reconnect with Irene, but Irene can see the danger that Claire is in and also the danger that she'll put herself in if she decides to hang out with Claire. There has been an adaptation of this recently made by Tessa Thompson, which I haven't watched yet and I keep meaning to watch, but I just think I probably won't love it as much as the book. This book is so tense and brilliant, and if you haven't read it yet, I really, really recommend that you do. This is me in a book, like the things I love in a book. This is a Bestiary by Lily Hoang. This is a very fragmented non-fiction book about fairy tales and identity and relationships. Here's a quote I underlined. To prove our renowned endurance of pain, Vietnamese women adorned their wrists with jade bracelets. In order to get the damn thing on, one must distort the hand, almost breaking it. I have yellow bruises for days, and yet this is proof of our delicacy, how well we take that agony and internalise it. The tighter the fit, the more suffering the woman can persevere, the more beautiful she is considered. To account for immigration, my dead sister used to tell people she was a princess in Vietnam. I would say that if you are a fan of Maggie Nelson's style of writing, then this is one that you would particularly enjoy as well. This is We Had to Remove This Post by Hanna Bervoets, which is translated from the Dutch by Emma Rolt. This is about a company that does content moderation and about the people who work there, about how it is their responsibility to look through all the red flagged content on the internet and decide whether or not it should stay up or whether it should be removed, whether the person who's posted it needs to be warned or whether they should be banned forever, and about the impact it has to be witnessing, studying, looking at horrific things day in, day out. Some of the people who work at this company become radicalized, some of them become severely depressed, and I think it's just one of those books that if you spend lots of time on the internet, you would maybe not enjoy reading. Enjoy is a weird word to pair with this book, but I think you would take a lot away from it, as did I. Another short book in translation, we've got Permafrost by Eva Baltasar. This is translated from the Catalan by Julia Sanchez. This is the first in a very loose trilogy. I actually read the second one first. I was going to say by mistake. It wasn't necessarily by mistake, but I read Boulder first because that was longlisted. I think just longlisted for last year's International Booker Prize. And then once I'd read that, I realised that this was, as I said, part of a loose trilogy, and Permafrost is the first one. They don't have the same characters, but they just follow women who are viewing the world in quite a similar way and following their journeys. And I think the third one in the trilogy is coming out in 2024. So this is about an unnamed lesbian narrator, and she is perplexed by life, by societal norms. She thought that one day life would make sense, and it just is not making sense for her. And her sister is talking about having kids and how brilliant that is, and she thinks that's ridiculous. Her mum is talking about relationships and how important they are, and she thinks that doesn't sound true for me either. This is one of the snarky comments that she makes, which I have underlined. Still, I couldn't seem to fall in love. I basically made friends, most of whom ended up as my lovers, and now and then a lover would fall in love with me and I'd have the impression that life was staring me dead in the eye in its most unflattering wig. There's nothing worse than feeling like you belong entirely to someone else, having to hear that you're key to their happiness or unhappiness reduced to a Lego block. Have we lost our minds? If you are on the lookout for some sarcastic writing then this is probably for you. She's just very cutting in the way that she talks about everything. So at one point she goes to Scotland to try and find herself, and then she decides she actually hates the colour green, and she abhors how the Scottish countryside is so very green, so she must leave immediately. It is a bit ridiculous, but like with the best books, many elements of truth to what she's saying as well. Child of Fortune by Yuko Tsushima, translated from the Japanese by Geraldine Harcourt, is a book that you would enjoy if you really like Eva Baltasar's work, because this again is about a woman who is questioning societal norms and the boxes that people have agreed to place themselves in. She's like, I wasn't present at these meetings and I didn't agree to this, so I don't know why I should be held to these particular standards. A lot of her work, most of her work, all of the work of hers that I have read deals with topics like this, especially surrounding motherhood. This is about a woman called Coco who has an 11-year-old daughter. She's brought up this daughter by herself. She's a single mum and she's been judged heavily for this. And now she finds herself pregnant again after a casual affair, and she doesn't know how to feel about that. She feels as though she's been thrown back in time and life is repeating itself again. She feels very lost and directionless. Itza by Rios de la Luz is a novel about a family of water witches living on the Mexican border, and it's about inherited trauma but also inherited stories and how these stories exist within the bodies of the women in this family, and it is filled with the most gorgeous prose. Let me see. Newborns smell like the inside of an exploding star. Mamie told me she used to have continuous stream of dreams about space travel when I floated into her womb. Her womb had stars swarming around inside like fireflies underwater. I imagined the fetus version of myself being delighted that these stars were compelled to guide me into warm water. Those were the moments I saw her on a pedestal, glowing and her skin shining. Those were the moments I wanted to cradle her in my arms. I wanted to tell her I knew there was softness behind her ribcage. Speaking of motherhood and mothers in families, this one here is Nails and Eyes by Kaori Fujino, and this is translated from the Japanese by Kendall Heitzman. This is 2 novellas. The first one is called Nails and Eyes, and it's about a young girl who is narrating a story that she couldn't possibly have witnessed, i.e. she imagines conversations that she's not present for, but reports on them as if they must be fact. It reminded me a lot of Amelie Northam's work, so if you enjoy Amelie Northam, you will like this. So this young girl's mother recently died, and her father then moves his new girlfriend into their apartment within a few weeks. This new girlfriend was a bit obsessed with the girl's mother. She used to read a blog that the mother wrote, and it's almost like she studied it as some form of test so that she can be camouflaged in her new environment and become the mother. I really enjoyed it. Lots of folktale elements, as I'm sure you can gather by that particular summary. Then we've got Mrs. Caliban by Rachel Ingalls. If you're looking for short books, the Faber Edition series is a good place to look because most of those are short, and this one is my favourite. This is about a woman who falls in love with a man who is part frog, part man. He's called Larry. I guess think Shape of Water, but more twisted than that. I think also grief is a thing with feathers because this is also tied up in child loss and grief as well, projections of grief. It's brilliant. Next up, we have What Willow Says by Lynn Buckle. This is a very poetic book about a grandmother and a granddaughter and about the personal sign language that they have created between the two of them to communicate in their home in the middle of the woods. And then as the granddaughter gets older and goes to school, she starts to use more standardized sign language to communicate with everybody else outside of her family bubble. And the grandmother recognizes that this is a necessary thing, but she also feels the grieving process of that, a gaining and also a losing at the same time. So this is about family, it is about language, it's about communication, it's about deaf culture, and it's about folklore. Then we've got Shy by Max Porter. This is his most recent book. It's about a teenage boy called Shy who is staying at a place called Last Chance, which is a home for very disturbed young men. And he decides to go out one night. He packs his backpack and he goes walking through the fields. And he's thinking over everything that he's done recently and how he really wants to be able to be calm and to communicate with people in the way that they would like him to communicate with them, but he just has so much anger and he feels like he sees the world so differently to other people, and he just doesn't have the patience for all of the bureaucratic nonsense that seems to be surrounding him a lot of the time, which, to be fair, is fair enough. The field is staying dead still, but it's tight and close around him, like he's wrapped up in it, a block of night that moves with him, breathes as he breathes. Everything is pressing edge, encroaching dense. He doesn't want to think about what might be out there. It's funny and it's painful and it will make your ribs ache. A really hypnotic novel is Untold Night and Day by Suah, which is translated from the Korean by Deborah Smith. This is about a woman who is wandering through Seoul during one day and one night. It is about the way we communicate stories. Part of it is set in an audio theatre where blind people go to listen to stories, and then part of it is about translation and how so much can be gained but also has to be relinquished during a translation process, which is quite meta given that this is a book in translation too. This is a book that's really all about perspective. So we're looking at light and darkness and how the same person or the same place could be described differently depending on the perspective that you are looking at it from, both literally and figuratively, and then applying that more widely to the characters that creep up in this book. In fact, some of these characters feel like the same people who are wearing different clothes, almost like cut out stock fairy tale characters that are presented to the reader. And because it's set in a heat wave, it makes it all feel really dreamlike, and again, like everything is blurring together, which fits in with the themes that it's exploring within the book too. And then we get to the final four, which are books that are between 150 and 200 pages. Two books that I would actually pair together. We've got Margaret the First by Danielle Duttton. This is a novel about a real life person called Margaret the First, Margaret Cavendish, Margaret of Newcastle, I think she was also called. She wrote a book called The Blazing World, which was published in 1666. It's a piece of proto-science fiction. She was a philosopher and was just all round a fascinating person. So this is a very poetic look at her life. And then we also have Indelicacy by Amina Kane, which is a novel that's set in a time period that you cannot pin down. It feels both ancient and modern, which is a deliberate technique from the author. She doesn't want you to feel very secure about the place that you're imagining or the time that you are picturing. She would like you to feel a little bit lost, like the main character in this book, who works as a cleaner at an art gallery but really wants to be a novelist. So she decides to marry a man that she doesn't particularly care about so that she has more time to spend at home so that she can write. But then once she has this time, she feels very disconnected from the outside world and doesn't feel as though she has the inspiration to write anymore. This is an instance where two books that are not associated with each other in any way, shape or form, I think can have really interesting conversations with each other. So if you would like to read both around the same time, I would definitely suggest doing that. I think that would be lots of fun. Then we've got Strangers by Tsushima. This is translated from the Japanese by Wayne P. Lammers. This is the book that the new film All of Us Strangers is based on, and very loosely based, really. This is about a man who was recently divorced, and he's living in an apartment block where not many other people live apart from this woman who he keeps seeing and tries to befriend. He's also a script writer and he's worried he's going to lose his job. So he's creating all of this fictional content that he hopes other people will believe. And then in his real life, he runs into a man who really reminds him of his father, but he thinks it can't be my father because my father is dead. But the more he spends time with this person, the more he realizes that to him at least it is his father. And in fact, this man is married to someone who really reminds him of his mother. So he finds himself in this situation that no one else would particularly believe, almost like he's fabricated it as one of the scripts that he's writing for TV. Talking to his parents, they're the same age in this ghostly form as he is now, and it's both cathartic and desperately sad. The premise of the film is extremely similar, but instead of him striking up a friendship with a woman who lives in his building, this is a queer romance story instead, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing the film when I can. But the book, I would recommend on its own too. And then finally, the last book that I would recommend that is under 200 pages is a book that was shortlisted for last year's Booker Prize. This is Western Lane by Chetna Maru. This is a novel about an 11-year-old girl called Gopi whose mother has just died. It's about her, her two sisters and her father, and how they all feel like they're islands and they're just floating around each other, finding it very difficult to make their voices land with each other. The father doesn't really know how to comfort his daughters because he's so locked in his own grief, but he feels like it's his job to push them and to distract them, and his form of distraction is to introduce them to squash and to really push them at it, make them feel really competitive, as though they can get out all of their anger and grief on the court. This is one of those quiet books that really gets under your skin and you're not actually aware of how much it's affecting you until you get to the end, and then you realise you're actually quite devastated. I think that is a really talented thing for an author to do, to catch you unawares like that. I think that subtlety is kind of hard to pull off. I did feel like the ending was perhaps a little bit rushed, but I still loved it overall. And speaking of books that are perhaps good to read in pairs, if that is your kind of thing, I think these two would really speak to each other on Trampolining by Rebecca Perry, and as I said, Western Lane by Chetna Maru, so that's something else to consider too. I would love to know if you've read any of these books, if you would also recommend them, or if you would like to pick them up now that I've talked about them. Let me know in a comment down below. Also let me know, and other people know, any books under 200 pages that you would particularly recommend. Thank you very much for joining me for this video. If you liked it and you're new to my channel and you would like to subscribe, that would be lovely. And if you enjoy my content and you would like to consider supporting me on Patreon, that'd be very kind. Link is in the description box. Patreon is a place where you can tip creators whose work you enjoy, and the support that I receive over there allows me to keep creating free content for you all here, and also funds my time creating captions, making these videos accessible, all of that good stuff. I am sending lots of love to you all, and I will see you for a new video next week. Bye.